Welcome to another edition of Union County Conversation, a show that helps you understand Union County government and its services. Today's episode will talk about the Union County budget process, where we are, and what steps are coming next. This show has been developed to help you have a better transparency of what Union County government officials go through when they're setting the annual budget. Joining me today are Union County's manager, Cindy Cotto, and Jeff Yates, the Executive Director of Administrative Services and Chief Financial Officer. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, start with some basic questions, or by answering some basic questions. Where does Union County get the money that funds the annual budget?
Well, the primary source of funding for Union County is going to come through property taxes. So we typically call those ad valorem taxes. Those are the taxes you pay on your car, if you have a business, your business personal property, and your house or your real property. And the bulk of our funding, at least in the general fund, comes through that. It's about 45% of what we receive in the general fund. The next largest is from other governments. We receive a lot of our money from the state and federal government and from other towns and other entities in the area to provide social services, law enforcement services, and other kinds of services, and then sales taxes. And those together all comprise about 75–80% of what we fund our general government with. Now in the enterprise fund, that's all funded through user fees, which we'll talk a little bit about later.
Yeah, we will talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. So describe the process that county officials and the agencies associated with the county go through in order to develop the annual budget.
We use a modified zero-based budget process, and what that means is we ask our departments to assume they're starting from zero, that we don't do an incremental budget, which a lot of agencies and governmental agencies do, where you add a consumer price index on top of a budget you already have, so your budget just continues to grow. But we actually ask our directors, as well as our sheriff and our register of deeds, for them to break down and identify where the associated costs are going to support the services that we provide to the residents. We find it to be a much more transparent process. We also find that it probably gives us the best truth in budgeting, so that we truly understand what is the cost of services and are we utilizing those dollars to the best of our ability.
So we talked about several different types of taxes that residents incur, but talk to me about the different kinds of funds that are within the budget. There's a general fund. What other types of funds? Sure. And just define those for us.
The best way to think about it is, and this is the way I always describe it, is it's like buckets. And then, for instance, at your home, you probably keep all of your funds together in one bucket. Well, at the county, what we do is we keep multiple buckets for different types of services. So we have the general fund, which is our largest bucket, and that provides for our general government. That's where all those tax dollars go and so forth. But we also have our enterprise funds, which are the water and sewer and solid waste funds. And those are generally supported by user fees. So tax dollars don't go to those. And this year in FY2015 and in 2016, we have what's called the school budgetary fund, which helps us fund the school system and accounts for the school's taxes, which everyone saw in their tax bill this last year. So we use these different funds to be able to accurately account for the revenue and the resources, as well as the services provided by each of those funds.
So with the water and sewer being an enterprise fund and that being funded by user fees, should that be used to fund general government services, or is that used?
Only about 40,000 customers in Union County use our water services. There's other water utilities in Union County that people have, and obviously people have wells and septic systems. So there's a smaller subset of our population that use those services, and those are fully funded through those fees. So we typically don't apply, or shouldn't apply, those revenues against general government costs, such as sheriff's department or schools or other areas, because that would be a small few taking the brunt of the cost for the larger part of the county for services that they don't just directly pay for.
Well, and I also think from that perspective, you're asking them to pay tax dollars for those services. And then on top of that, since they are also paying user fees, they also would be using their user fees to do that. And those user fees are really to go back into the utility system to operate and maintain the utility system, and are pretty separate and distinct from the rest of the services that we provide.
So when does I know that it's a long process to put together the budget, and I know that because of working with the county, but for our viewers, define when does the process start, where are you in the process now, and when can residents expect to have an adopted budget?
We actually begin the process in August. That's very early on, and that's really primarily out of Jeff's shop, as when they start the preparations. During the months of October through January, departments are working on their budget, and they just recently submitted their request to the finance department. Also, about 2 weeks ago, we had our first budget workshop with the board, and we will have 3 or 4 more during the year. So it's almost a 12-month process. Where we are presently is the departments have submitted their budget request. I have sitting on my desk about a 1,300-page document that I'm presently going through, and in about 2 weeks we'll sit down with the departments and offices and go through what their budget requests are. We've actually scheduled within our timeline an opportunity to meet with them at least on more than one occasion if we have questions. So it's a pretty rigorous process. We ask lots of questions, and the information that I have, as well as Jeff's office has, it's a line item detailed budget. So we have all of the information before us so that we can ask the questions to make sure that we fully understand what the budget requests are.
Well, and I think that's good, because that way you have all the questions answered before the budget is approved, and then, because once a budget is approved, it sounds like you start planning for the next year.
That's correct.
So, well, okay, so tell me about the 5-year projections and findings for Union County government.
Well, as Cindy mentioned, we had our first work session with the commission a couple of weeks ago, our first meeting in February, and we presented our 5-year projection report, which includes our financial projections, our demand for services index, our fiscal indicators, as well as our debt and economic indicators. And what that allows us to do is take a snapshot in time of where the county is financially, what the world around us is doing, what our service demands are. It really sets the basis for the discussion Cindy and I will have with the departments coming up, and the commission will have later as they deliberate over the budget. And from that, during that discussion, some of the findings that we had, or at least some of the concerns, are the ongoing trade-off and changes in our demographics as far as service delivery. We will ultimately have to make some decisions as a county as our population ages, and our school-age population in a few years will start to decrease, how we provide our services and what services we need to tailor to provide to that changing upper echelon or upper age group. Some of the other things, for instance, we looked at school funding, and the current model, given the legislation that's in place, is really not a sustainable model. So some decisions coming in the future on how we handle that. And just generally, what we found was the county's in good fiscal health right now, but it's an ever-changing environment. We have to be vigilant in that process, and I think that that was really the big communication coming out of that report, was that as we go through this process, while we're doing well, we can't stop working on that and trying to continue to round off the edges.
Right. So Cindy, what does your staff feel is recommend as the focus area for this year's budget? And how does that tie into the overall county plan of work?
Well, our board has indicated in past years, and they continue to indicate to us, that public safety is their #1 priority. Again, this year, one of the focus areas we have identified is the volunteer fire departments. We know that our present model is not sustainable, that we're going to have to come up with a solution. We looked at it last year, gathered a lot of information last year, but didn't quite make it to the goal line. So we will be working on that again this year. And they concur with our assessment that it is not a sustainable model, and we need to figure out something else. One of the other areas is we've been working with the schools on the working group that was created through the recent legislation. And they put together what they refer to as their CCEP, which is kind of their roadmap for their capital improvement program. So one of our topic areas is looking at how do we continue to fund the schools' capitals. If there are expansions within that report, which we believe there will be, How do we fund that, as well as the county, other than the Human Services building that we are paying cash for, and great deal thanks to the lease we had from the hospital, the monies associated with that, and the sheriff's firing range. Other than that, we have a number of projects that have been on the books since 2007, 2008 that we really haven't had any funding source for. Park expansions, library expansions, a new correctional facility. And so we're going to be having some dialogue with our board as to what are the priorities on those capital improvement programs, and whether or not in 2016 they want to look at doing some sort of a bond issue.
So there's, with a growing municipality like Union County, where the resident base is growing, it's changing, it's diverse, there are a lot of needs, and I can tell that putting together a budget is not an easy task. Are there some parts of the process that are more difficult than others?
In my opinion, it's all difficult because I think all of my departments submit to me what they believe they need to continue to run their operations. And unfortunately, I'm placed in a situation of having to make a determination as to what is going to get funded this year, what is not going to get funded, and making those recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners. So we constantly find ourselves in the situation of how do we cut the baby in half? And that sounds like a terrible thing, but it really is a very difficult process we have to go through, because we know that although all the needs are justified, there just isn't enough money to go around.
Well, and that kind of speaks to what Jeff said earlier about how the county is healthy financially right now, but you have to stay on top of things in order to maintain that. And so that does mean often making hard decisions. There are things that, of course, are needed and wanted and would do great things, but you just have to determine when the timing is. And all of us have to do that within our own budgeting at home. So what's next in the budget process, and how can the public get involved?
Well, our next step is we'll have a couple of work sessions coming up at the next 3 commission meetings after tonight. That'll be the March 2nd meeting, the 16th, and April 6th, where we'll talk about our focus areas. We'll be posting those presentations to our website, as well as any other presentations that we do, video feeds and so forth. And then once we get started into the public presentation of the final budget, which is around the 1st of May, we'll have additional budget work sessions, public hearings. We'll also have our emails up for Ask the Manager or Make Public Comment. And those can all be found on our website. We've already got our Budget 2016 pages up and running. So whatever we've done to date is already up there, including, I think, a presentation from the working group is up there as well. So it's really, we welcome comment. And if folks still can't find that, they're welcome to email or call our office, and we'll provide them whatever information they would like to receive.
And also in our Board of County Commissioners meeting, we do have an informal comment section before every meeting, and if there is an issue that a resident feels very strongly about, they can certainly also use that avenue as well.
So there are several ways that you at home can get involved with the budget process. First, you can visit the website at unioncountync.gov. There is a budget website based on the homepage where you can look at all of the documents that have been created to date for the 2015-2016 budget. You can email the county manager at askthecountymanager@unioncountync.gov. You can also look at last year's budget documents on the main website. There is a Citizens Annual Financial Report, and there is a Popular Annual Financial Report.
The Comprehensive Annual Financial Report.
Sorry, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. And those are developed so that general citizens can easily understand where tax dollars are going. You can also call the number that is listed on your screen. Thank y'all for coming in today, and we'll do another update as we get closer. And thank you for tuning in today, and I hope you have a great day in Union County.
Thank you.
Thank you.